pleased to welcome to the studio our MP currently, Michelle Ferreri.
Thanks for having me, Jay. It's great to be here.
Michelle, it's great to be here. I almost introduced you as the MP for Peterborough-Kawartha, but that no longer exists. We have a new riding. It's been simplified. Tell us about the riding of Peterborough.
Yes. So when the boundaries changed we've now transitioned from the 44th Parliament. It's all closed up. It's dissolved when they call an election. And now the federal boundaries changed from Peterborough-Kawartha to Peterborough. So I always make a joke for my friends that I work with that were French, or even the speaker my kids always made fun of. They could never say the word Kawartha. It's always Kawartha. So now it's just Peterborough. So what does that mean where you're voting? You can always log on to Elections Canada website. They have everything you need there. But ultimately what we switched was no longer does Peterborough-Kawartha have Trent Lakes, which is your Buckhorn area, or North Kawartha, which is your Apsley area. That's now been replaced. That goes over into Jamie Schmale, the current MP's riding. And then what we've done here is Otonabee South Monaghan is now in the Peterborough riding, as well as Asphodel, Norwood, and Hiawatha. Everything else stays the same. So your Selwyn, your Durrow-Dummer, your Havelock, Curve Lake. What am I forgetting? I should have.
You should have tried to name all those townships. But, Elections Canada has that all online. And
Peterborough City, obviously.
And talked about the Kawarthas. I am glad it's simplified, but Kawartha, I think, is the proper name, as we know from the New East City School.
Right.
So, yeah, it's probably a good thing. Simplifies it. It's good old Peterborough, and the riding will hopefully have a good turnout this year. Michelle, the election, you've been an MP now for several years, and being in opposition can be a challenge. Your job there is to keep the government of the day honest and make sure you get to the needs of the riding in front of people that need to know. But what do you look at as your best accomplishment as an MP in taking the Peterborough-Kawartha story to Ottawa?
Yeah, thanks for that question. You're right. Opposition is a very challenging position, especially when you had a coalition, which was ultimately a majority. So elevating the voices of the people, I would say, is the number one issue. And I gained a reputation pretty quickly in Parliament for a lot of people. I'm very fortunate. I've been very vocal in Parliament and in committee. I have a very visible seat behind the leader, Pierre Poilievre of the Conservative Party. And everybody can access how many times people speak in the House, and mine it's significantly higher. I make a joke, Jay. I used to get in trouble for talking too much. Now I get paid to talk too much. But in all seriousness, one of the things that I'm very proud of is I was able to read comments, stories from the people of Peterborough-Kawartha into the record. I think one of the biggest things, government can't always fix problems, but feeling heard and ensuring that your problems are known are critical, right? And I think the goal is to not make things worse. We have to make things better. And so elevating those stories and voices, and especially when it comes to victims. I was, in the position in many of the committees I sit on, and as a critic for families, children, and social development, to question a lot of ministers about the role of the policies that hurt a lot of victims. What we've seen in the last 10 years is victims' rights have went underneath criminals' rights. And so, we had a local story here, terrible story of a young woman, Selena Taylor, and her attacker and the man who was responsible for her death, he was out on bail. And we can't have that, we can't have that. And to call out the minister on that and to be able to share, the family stories personally, and also I think about Eric Roeder, who took his own life in Roeder's Reach and the community grieving. It was one of the most powerful obituaries I'd ever read, where they addressed that his death was by the disease of bipolar. And I thought that was so brave of the family. But, the wait list to get mental health help, the wait list for addiction, there's no access to treatment and recovery. And so we have to have access to these things. And you can't fix anything if you don't acknowledge it, Jay. You can't manage what isn't acknowledged. And so I think that's key. But locally too, showing up. I think that's the most thing. I remember when I was canvassing in 2021, people said, we want an MP who shows up. And, I try to go to everything that I'm invited to. I try to, I always say I will phone anyone back. Even if we're not on the same political team, Jay, it shouldn't matter, right? We got to talk to each other. People phone me. happy to chat with them, happy to go to as many things as possible, but also our office, the mandate, the mission statement from me is service. We live in a world where customer service has so degraded. You can't get a person on the phone. You know, government services, we've never paid so much in taxes in our life and had such terrible service, you know? And so we try at my office very succinctly to help every single person that walks through that office. And even if it isn't our area, because some people really get the different levels of government confused. Can you fix my garbage? It's okay. We'll hopefully connect you to who you need to have instead of saying, nope, that's not my problem. Go somewhere else. You know, I think we just need a lot more connection in customer service, and we've been very proud. We have outstanding numbers of the service we've provided in my office as well.
Michelle, you alluded to it, and I remember interviewing you at the last election, and you did indicate you're all about mental health and addictions. And what has been the biggest challenge in helping contribute to that solution? Were you able to do that in opposition? Was the previous government listening? Were there any advances made?
I think there was tremendous advances made in that the truth was uncovered, Jay. You know, when the Conservatives first came out, myself included, and pointed out the absolute obscenity of safe supply and that it wasn't helping, it was contributing to diversion and creating a whole new generation of addicts. You know, people were like, you're a liar, this is not true. And we were able to prosecute that to the point now where folks are like, holy crap, this is really bad. 50,000 people have died of an overdose in the last 10 years since the Liberals took power. 50,000 people. That's more than we lost in the Second World War. And what was our solution? It is to keep putting money into the very thing that's creating the problem. And so I think locally what we've been able to do is we've been able to say this isn't working. They've all had to backtrack. We saw it in the BC election. People had to backtrack on what they were doing and say, okay. And I think, you know, it's fine to try something, Jay, but if you don't recognize that it's not working and it's in fact making things worse, you have to change course. And, you know, there's amazing organizations in Peterborough doing great work. You know, Peggy Shaughnessy, Right to Heal, Rising Above, I got to go to their graduation. The success rate of these places is huge and they're not getting the funding. So what will we do in power?
That was my question.
Yeah, in Conservatives, you have to redirect the funding. So you can't keep pouring it into holding people where they are, which is what we're doing right now. So if you come to me and you have addiction under the federal government, we're going to say, the Liberal federal government, they would say, oh, here, I'm going to keep you where you're at. Here's a crack pipe. I'm going to pay for your needles. I'm going to do that for you. No, stop with that and redirect that funding into treatment and recovery and programs with proven success rates. You know, Peggy Shaughnessy has that locally. Bruce Oak, which I've been had the luxury of visiting. These are proven programs with success where it helps not just that person suffering from addiction, but the whole family and the whole community. So we have to fund treatment and recovery. And we have to, a huge announcement today when we're doing this interview, I'm not sure when it'll air, but we have to put fentanyl traffickers behind bars. They're murderers. Fentanyl is killing our people, our families, our children, and we have to have strict crime policies that people who are out on bail are not terrorizing our community and trafficking drugs and trafficking humans. Human trafficking has went up 84% since 2015.
And Michelle, dealing with the issues you just raised, I was going to ask what is the number one priority for the Conservative Party of Canada? I'm assuming that is one, but what would be, if that wasn't what the priority was, what would be the next priority? What do you think needs to change at the federal level to make our riding a better place?
How long do we have, Jay?
About 5 minutes.
The question I say to you and to voters who are sitting on the fence, I say, what has gotten better in the last 10 years? And, you know, I have the privilege to go knock on thousands of doors. There's nothing more humbling and real than going to the people. And when I knock on their doors, I can tell you without a doubt, people are standing on the edge or they've went over the edge. They are suffering at a level I've never seen in my life. They've never made as much money, worked as hard, and been so poor. The stress of young families, it's emotional, Jay. The people who have tears in their eyes, they can't afford to live. Seniors who are trying to live on $1,800 a month when the cost of food has increased almost 40% higher than in the US. Why? Why? And why are we so weak and vulnerable against that guy in the States, right? We have every single thing the world needs in Canada, and we have not developed it. Why? Because of ideology. No, we're not going to develop our minerals. We have the largest mineral mine in the world in the Ring of Fire in Northern Ontario, valued at $1 trillion. That would change lives. You know, these are careers, not just jobs. And we don't develop it. Why? Because under the Liberals and NDP, their ideology was you're going to let the planet burn if you develop any oil or gas or any of our clean energy. And that can't stay like that. You have to invest in our resources. We have this amazing opportunity. And crime, I would say, in Peterborough, housing, all of these issues come back to a thriving economy, and the economy has been decimated. Young people are desperate for homes. They don't feel a sense of purpose. They don't feel a sense of hope because they work really hard and they can't save up for a home. So all of these things, seniors need help, income tax. We are paying 46% of our income in taxes. Why go to work?
Michelle,
and immigration.
And we can talk about that if we have some time. How do you deal with the fact you're talking about seniors not being able to afford things with their incomes? Does that mean there's an increase in old age security, an increase in CPP? Because I haven't heard that as a platform. There's talk about extending the age, and I understand your party leader said he wouldn't extend the age before you could receive it. But you have to pay for that with inputs like taxes. How would you jive with those two, having people that aren't having enough funds to survive when they're collecting government benefits with lowering taxes? How does that work?
So I think there's two things. I talked to a lovely woman yesterday, and she is a senior, and she's living on $1,800 a month. And I said, everything has gone up, and your money has stayed the same. We have to restore everything back to an affordability rate. That's the value of the dollar is worth nothing. I wear this penny necklace. It's a local artist that made this necklace. And I remember, what is the penny worth? It's worth less and less and less. So if you make money worth less, then you don't have enough to spend. So that's number one. You have to get back to being fiscally responsible, not spending more than you have and not wasting the crazy amounts of money we have seen. And I think that's going to be key for seniors. Also reducing the income tax. But what was the second part of the question?
Just how do you've got to pay for those.
So how do you,
benefits.
Those are the resources piece of it. Thank you for bringing that up. That's the resource piece of it. I can't stress that enough. We have all of these resources. Like I said, the Ring of Fire is worth $1 trillion, Jay. Like that's
building the economy.
You have to build, and not only will that increase our revenue and make us wealthy, it also allows us to be more sovereign and invest in our defense and all of the things that we've now all of a sudden been threatened of, which we should never have been put in this position.
Speaking of that, until recently, I mean, the party didn't like the previous prime minister, and it seemed like the country wanted to change, and the Liberal Party came up, and we have Mark Carney as a new prime minister. People were talking about the next prime minister being Pierre Poilievre. That's changed. It's a much closer rate now. How has that impacted you? And we have less than a minute to go, so sorry to save that to the end.
That's okay.
How do you deal with that?
Oh, well, you know what I'm hearing at the door is people are ready for a change. I hear it over and over and over. You can't keep doing the same thing and expecting something different. And again, I go back, what has gotten better in your life in the last 10 years? And Mark Carney has been the top economic advisor to Justin Trudeau for the last 5 years. So all of the economic policies that have put us in this position of weakness and vulnerability, of waste, and not developing our resources based purely out of ideology to keep it in the ground is underneath Mark Carney's advisement. So if you're voting for Mark Carney, you're voting for the same thing. All of his cabinet, the same ministers. You know what drives me crazy is you had all these ministers when they knew they were going to lose say, oh, I'm not running again. I want to spend time with my family. Sean Fraser, Anita Anand. Then they brought in other people to work their butts off to achieve that candidate position. And the minute they think that Mark Carney might win, I'm going to run again. That's not fair.
Michelle,
that's not
that note, we'll stop it there. Wish you well in the campaign.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for joining us. And thank you. We'll see you next time.